drift on a sailboat. My love is the sea. Yours is the horizon, constant and steady. You said my limbs too tired to flow, lifting my lonesome sails. The tide is out, the moon is high, we're sailing.
Hey everybody, happy Monday. Welcome back to another episode of Lionheart Radio with Rick Alexander. Last week I was asked a question on an interview where I was being interviewed on another show, and the person said, why is it that you've made this switch to talking about a lot of philosophy and psychology and psychological concepts as opposed to all the sort of sports and fitness and more technical things that you used to talk about? For anybody that's listened to this show for any amount of time knows that as it originally started, it was a side project of my supplement company. And in that, the reason we did it is because we had access to all of these different CrossFit athletes. And so we started out talking about working out, and we talked about different techniques. And from time to time, I still do talk about that. In fact, I'm releasing an ebook on physiological adaptation in the next few weeks. But one thing that I came to the realization of is that all of the sets and reps in the world, like no matter how you program from a technical basis, all of that means nothing if your head is a mess. Then the flip side of that is that if your head isn't a mess, or if your head is screwed on correctly and your world is mapped out in a correct way, which allows you to contend with the world and become successful, then it doesn't matter what the sets and reps are to a certain degree because you still have the opportunity to be successful. And so in short, what I found is that the most gain that we could possibly make was from a psychological perspective. And then regardless of that, when it comes to performance psychology, you can apply that to any endeavor that you might want to take on in life. So it doesn't matter if you want to be an elite athlete or an executive in a company or how you want to sort of quote unquote excel in life, you have to get the psychological component correct. You know, one of the things that happened to me is at 30 years old, I had the most successful year of my life. And I've talked about all that on the show before, but I had this moment where I sort of looked around and I just felt like I was fucking miserable. And what I realized that I didn't have correctly was the worldview component. I didn't necessarily know how I thought about things, and I didn't think about things that made me productive. I've talked about in the past how when we look at the world, we're looking for coherence, which is essentially 1 + 1 + 1 always has to equal 3 in our mind. And so the events that take place in our lives can be profoundly destabilizing if we don't have the ability to make sense of them. Well, one of the other things, in my opinion, that a worldview should include is productivity. And I don't mean you should be productive from a technical standpoint where you should be able to get a lot done, although that is certainly a byproduct of a productive worldview. What I mean is that it should make you want to be a better person. Your worldview should make you want to be successful. It should give you a reverence for life. Because one of the things that nobody ever talks about, a lot of times people talk about this fact that the universe is indifferent to you, that the world doesn't give a fuck about you. But what people don't ever think about is where that line of thinking goes. Because if you follow that line of thinking long enough, the place that you get is nihilism. And so as far as I can tell, it doesn't actually do you any good to believe that. So even if you think that you exist in an objective reality, you still have to contend with being a human here. And there's still things that you want to do. And so to some degree, you always have to be able to figure out the psychological component of what you are doing. And so the most bang for your buck, in my opinion, comes from being able to get the philosophical part of the equation right in life. So we should spend time like really doing deep work, thinking about how we think about things. Thinking about how we view different aspects of life. And with Morning Coffee, I really don't get into technical stuff at all because it doesn't matter what your technical proficiency might be. I think that we really need to kind of come up with a keen focus on all of the soft skills that are going to make us a more complete human. And then whatever we decide to do technically, we can plug into that equation and still be successful and still consider our time here on Earth to be successful. As I found out in the past, all of the achievement in the world, all of the things going right, getting what you want in this life is actually useless if you don't have a productive worldview. And that's why a lot of the conversations that I've had have shifted and kind of take place around philosophy now, and not so much of the sets and the reps and the things like that. Although there's still part of me that enjoys that, and I still think that it's going to remain part of the show. But by and large, from my perspective, we can just get so much more done if we focus on the mental piece. And no matter what it is that you do, there are things that you can take away from the mental piece. And that's something I've realized in my own life. There were times where being special forces in the military or special operations in the military, I learned lessons that I could take and I could put them into business. And then there were things that I learned in sports that I could take and I could put them into my relationships. And I talk about this all the time on the show, but everything is everything. So nothing exists in silos that we do. And so how you think about any one thing is how you actually think about all things, in my opinion, which is really what my next book is about. And so I open this talking about why I have differed in my approach to human performance and why I'm focusing so much more on psychology. And I think this would be a good time for me to just tell you, you should really spend a lot of time thinking about how you think about things, because there's so much more that we can get done if we map out the world in a productive manner. So it shouldn't only breed coherence, it should also breed productivity. And so a little light philosophy talk on a Monday, and I'll talk to you guys tomorrow on Morning Coffee.